Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're going to decode a mystery that is literally right in front of us every single day. We all deal with it, but we rarely stop to actually think about the unseen forces dictating the exact prices we pay at the checkout counter. So let's dive right in and start putting the pieces of the price puzzle together. Let's kick things off with a frustration I know we have all experienced. You're looking at a flight for an upcoming holiday, right? And you spot a seat for 3,000 rupees. You think, okay, let me wait a day to book it. You check back tomorrow, and suddenly, that exact same seat on the exact same plane is 9,000 rupees. I mean, it feels incredibly arbitrary, doesn't it? It feels like the airline is just messing with us.
Or think about this one. You head down to the local market. Have you ever noticed why fresh vegetables are priced at a premium first thing in the morning, but if you swing by right before the market closes, those exact same veggies are suddenly marked way down? Well, this perfectly illustrates our core premise today. These price fluctuations, they aren't just random annoyances meant to drive us crazy. They're actually highly logical, calculated market reactions. To make sense of all this, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the power of demand. Second, the logic of supply. Third, finding market equilibrium. Fourth, real-world market dynamics. And finally, what happens when the government steps in.
All right, part one, the power of demand, or the buyer's mindset.
Let's start with the very first suspect in our mystery, you, the buyer. Every time you even consider buying something, you are participating in the powerful force of demand. But, and this is crucial, demand isn't just wanting something. I mean, I would love a private jet, but I definitely don't have the purchasing power for one. True demand requires two things: the willingness to buy a product, complemented by the actual cash in your wallet to buy it at a specific price.
Let's put some real numbers to this to see how a buyer's brain actually works. Imagine a shopper named Srivali, and she's out buying mangoes. Early in the season, when mangoes are a steep 150 rupees per kilo, her willingness and ability meet at just 1 kilo. But watch what happens as the price drops. At 100 rupees, she's willing to buy 2 kilos. Drop it down to 50 rupees, she's happily walking away with 3. We're seeing the exact, logical way a buyer reacts to a price drop.
And that brings us to a massive foundational rule, the law of demand. Based on Srivali's mangoes, we can see a clear inverse relationship. When prices fall, the quantity demanded goes up. If you plotted her purchases on a graph, you'd get a line sloping right down. It's simple human nature. Lower prices equal more buyers.
Now, here is where it gets really fascinating. Our demand choices can shift dramatically, even if the main product's price doesn't change a single rupee. Why? Because of related goods. Take substitute goods, which can replace each other. If coffee suddenly becomes ridiculously expensive, you might just switch to tea. That drives up the demand for tea without tea prices ever changing. On the flip side, we have complementary goods. If everyone goes out and buys a printer today, the demand for ink cartridges is going to skyrocket tomorrow, purely because they go together.
There's also this really interesting psychological factor that pulls at our demand. Imagine sitting down and eating a perfectly ripe mango. That first one, absolutely amazing. The second one, pretty good. But by the time you force down a fourth mango, you probably don't even want to look at one again. That is the principle of diminishing marginal utility. As the joy you get from a product drops with each extra one you consume, your willingness to pay for it drops right along with it.
Okay, moving right along to part two, the logic of supply, or the seller's mindsets.
So we have to flip the coin and look at the second half of this equation, the seller. While we, the buyers, want rock-bottom prices, sellers want the exact opposite. Supply is the quantity of a product that sellers are actually willing and able to offer at a specific price. And logically, higher prices incentivize producers to make more. If they can make more money per item, of course they want to sell as many of those items as humanly possible.
Look what happens when we zoom out and aggregate multiple sellers. We've got sellers A, B, and C here. Check out the total market supply column on the far right. At 50 rupees, the whole market is only putting out 6 kilos of mangoes. But as that price climbs up to 150 rupees, the total market supply jumps to 18 kilos. It's a crystal clear upward trend. The moment prices go up, sellers flood the market.
So we can summarize the law of supply like this. As price increases, the quantity supplied increases. It's a curve sloping upward. But just like with demand, supply isn't only driven by the current price tag. Think about a farmer deciding what crops to plant.
If the going rate for wheat is super low, but chickpeas are selling for an absolute premium, that farmer is logically going to pivot to chickpeas. They are chasing the higher profit.
All right, part 3, finding market equilibrium, which is essentially finding the sweet spot.
So we've got buyers trying to pull prices down and sellers trying to push them up. What actually happens when these two forces collide? Well, at 40 rupees, buyers want 38 kilos, but sellers are only offering 6. That's a huge shortage, excess demand. Jump to 150 rupees, and sellers are throwing 43 kilos at the market, but buyers only want 8. That's a massive surplus. The magic happens right there in the middle row. At exactly 100 rupees, buyers want 12 kilos, and sellers are offering exactly 12 kilos. That is the sweet spot. The market is cleared. No shortage, no surplus. That right there is market equilibrium.
Which leads us to part 4, real-world market dynamics, or why everything is a moving target.
Okay, I gotta pull the rug out from under you just a little bit here. That perfectly stable equilibrium we just found, in our messy, chaotic reality, it's pretty much a myth. Markets are incredibly dynamic. Just look at the mask shortage during COVID-19. Step 1, the pandemic hits out of nowhere. Step 2, the demand for masks surges overnight. Step 3, the supply literally cannot catch up, creating massive excess demand, so prices absolutely skyrocket. But then, step 4, over time, suppliers see there's money to be made, production ramps up, supply finally catches up, and prices naturally fall back down toward a new equilibrium.
And this brings us right back to that flight and hotel example from the very beginning. Look at this number, 25,000 rupees. That is the actual tariff for a single hotel room in Goa on New Year's Eve. Why? Extreme dynamic pricing. That exact same room, say on a rainy Monday in July, it might only cost 1,500 rupees. Hotels and airlines are constantly adjusting their prices, sometimes hour by hour, based on sudden demand, local events, and whatever supply they have left. They're just trying to capture the maximum revenue as the equilibrium shifts around them.
Finally, part 5, when government steps in to act as the referee.
So what happens when the market basically breaks, or an emergency hits and the free market stops playing fair? That is exactly when the government steps in. One of their biggest tools is a price ceiling. It's an imposed limit setting the absolute maximum amount a seller can charge for a product. Governments use tools like this to ensure fairness and prevent massive exploitation, especially on essentials like life-saving medicines, where the free market might just make them completely unaffordable for everyday people.
A great real-world example of this was hand sanitizer during the early pandemic. Let's trace this timeline. First, demand surged. Second, some sellers actually started hoarding the product to create artificial scarcity and drive up the price. Third, the government stepped in using the Essential Commodities Act, capping the price of a 200 ml bottle at exactly 100 rupees. Because of that cap, hoarding instantly became unprofitable. So fourth, production rose. And fifth, the market stabilized. Governments also step in to build public goods, like roads, streetlights, and parks. Why? Because these things don't generate direct private profit, so regular market suppliers just won't build them. Now, it is important to look at the other side of this impartially. When a government heavily regulates a market or distorts prices, it can accidentally reduce producer incentives. If farmers aren't allowed to charge a market rate for their wheat, well, they might just stop growing it entirely. Plus, heavy compliance burdens and tight regulations can make it incredibly tough for small entrepreneurs to get a business off the ground. It is always a very delicate balancing act between protecting the consumer and inadvertently stifling the supplier. So as we participate in these markets every single day, whether we're chasing fast fashion deals or utilizing local resources, our choices today are directly impacting the supply of tomorrow. It really makes you wonder, should we just focus on short-term gains and snagging the lowest price right now? Or do we need to start prioritizing long-term sustainability? Keep that in mind the next time you see a price tag fluctuate. You're looking at a living, breathing puzzle. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.